If you ever wondered why your mix doesn't sound wide or it sounds cluttered, problem could lie in the way that you're panning. What's up? It's your boy Sebastian back with another video on this 31 days to metal tips that series thing that I got going on. Today we're going to be covering LCR panning, and it is a really simple way to get width out of your mixes without having to overthink as to where to put everything in the stereo field. Now, there are some exceptions that I personally use for this, that being mostly toms, to be completely honest with you. Other than that, though, pretty much everything else is either going to be left, right, or center. So just a quick overview of the instruments that I would apply LCR to. Kick, snare, bass, and vocals tend to be pretty much always up the middle, so the center track. Toms, overheads, room mics, guitars, any post effects, synthesizers, stuff like that tend to be left or right hard panned pretty much 100% of the time. So I got that same song that we worked on the last video pulled up here, and everything's in mono. I'm going to play that for you very quickly, and then from there, I'm going to go ahead and then just start panning everything left, center, or right, and see how we can get a really wide sounding mix in a matter of minutes. Now, there was some stereo elements, as I'm sure that you guys heard. That's just because my overhead is a stereo track, so there's nothing I can do about making it already left and right, as it comes that way already. And some of the reverbs are stereo as well that I have on the snare, but just ignore those for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start setting our LCR tracks. I'm going to start with my guitars, as that's going to give us the most immediate effect with width and energy. All right, sounding good already. Let's go ahead and set up our cymbal mics. So I got a hi-hat, I got a ride, and I got a china. And I'm literally just gonna set the hi-hat all the way to the left. I'm gonna set the ride all the way to the right. And I'm gonna set the china all the way to the right. Let's go ahead and do this section here. Okay, let's check another blast beat section here. Same thing for room mics. Room mics are stereo tracks. If you were to make those mono, it would collapse a lot of the image of the drums right up the center. You don't really want that. You want the rooms to kind of glue all of the kit elements into one room area. Now, here is the part that I actually would set manually, which would be toms. Now, toms, for me, they do have a bit of a set value. So the left tom tends to always be around 80, maybe about 75. And then the floor tom always tends to be around 80. Can I get it? We'll just leave it at 80. I have found over the years that fully doing left, right, and center, and I'm going to do it now for you for the sake of the argument, that it sounds too disparate. Like he's like literally has to go from here to here in a matter of seconds, and it's a little strange sounding in your, especially when you have headphones on. See, like that's a little crazy. Hear that again? It's a little much. So we'll set those values back and kind of collapse the tom image a little bit, and we got more of a natural sounding tom roll. And it still sounds pretty wide. So that is toms. Bass, right up the center. We already did rhythm guitar tracks. Let's check out lead guitar tracks. Lead guitar tracks, depending on what they are and how they sound, I tend to spread them out either 50%, 25%, or 75%. So I work within those values of 25% per width, but I always start with a value of 50% and adjust from there. So let's go ahead and do 50%. See how that sounds? That actually sounds pretty good to me. Let's check out what happens if I set them to 75%. I actually like that a lot better than the 50%. Now, the reason I don't do hard left and hard right for lead guitar tracks like this is because the rhythm guitar tracks are already fully 100% on the left and right, and I don't want anything conflicting that is guitar related with those, because Guitar Room has already a bunch of frequencies and bandwidth within the mix that I don't need those rhythm guitar tracks, which are supposed to be adding the power and the aggression to the mix, to be interfered with anything else that has that same real estate in terms of frequencies. In this case, that would be the lead guitar tracks. Solos, depending again on what they are and how many tracks I have and what I'm provided, would either be completely straight up the center, or if there's like some harmonies that are kind of stereo, I would apply the 25% rule for the lead guitar tracks to the solo tracks. So 25%, hear how that sounds. 50%, hear how that sounds. 75%, hear how that sounds. In this case, I only have 2 tracks, which is a solo and a solo harmony, that are not stereo whatsoever. They're just completely straight up the center. And let's check how that sounds. I mean, that sounds great. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Now, vocals, again, those are really easy, just straight up the center. Now, only rule to that is I do have some stereo screams, one on the left and one completely on the right. And just like everything else, I'm gonna just hard pan them left and right. So my goal with these 99% of the time is just to add some width to the vocals. It's not really meant to be like really in your face and heard. It's just meant to be more of like an encapsulation of like, oh, this line needs to be emphasized, or I want this line to be a little bit more in your face. So I'm going to add some width to it with these vocals here. So I'm going to play a center track of vocals leading into those 2 tracks that have the panning hard left and hard right. So as you can tell, they're not really there to, add volume. They're there more to just add like the perception of width, like, whoa, pig squeal is actually pretty crazy sounding and huge. If I was to mute it, that kind of excitement would go away. See, so like it's audible, but if I was to push those back in, so it kind of, like I said, just adds some width. And I pretty much do this with any kind of background vocals, whether that's harmonies, gang vocals, screams such as this. Anything that is not a main vocal track is going to be panned hard left and hard right. And I don't have any like synthesizer tracks or anything like that on this particular song. So if I did, though, again, those would also be panned extremely hard in left and right. I don't overthink it. And that's how you get really wide mixes. Don't overthink this. There's going to be people on the internet kind of trying to tell you something else, where they're challenging you to just, put the toms where the overheads are, or, fit everything on the overhead mics on the drums, or make sure that it's just, dude, fuck all that, man. Just hard pan left and right, pan the toms until they sound natural and not super disparate, and then everything else can just be LCR. It's been the most successful way I have found panning to work for me, and it's allowed me to get some really, really sick sounding mixes without having to overthink of where everything has to sit in the stereo spectrum. 99% of the time, just left, center, right, forget about it, don't think about it, and done. Catch you guys in the next video where we check out another tip on this 31 days to a better metal mix.